for bringing such a wild radical in here. I'd like to thank everyone associated with St. Mary and literally the global village that assured that I would be standing in this spot right now. And thanks to everyone from Pennsylvania who put their blood, sweat, and tears behind me. There's a box back there with tomatoes and other produce you can hurl at me. Do we have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you see cognitive dissonance factoring into what you're talking about?
Explain a little deeper, because that's a very broad question.
Okay, so is it possible that perhaps it's not necessarily just a religious orientation that's causing this disconnect from understanding climate change? Perhaps it's personally your actions.
If your primary, we were just talking about the Mormon Church, and if your primary rule of life, your worldview, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about your worldview. And in my country, you live near us, you ought to know this. In my country, depending upon where you live, like the Mormons, for instance, depending upon where you live, you can live in an area where the entire community, politically and otherwise, is informed and driven by the church. There are other places in our country where they don't care what you do. And I posit right now, one of the reasons why attendance in churches has declined is because of enlightenment. And because people look at this disconnect. I think I don't know if I'm the first person, but I think I might be the first person to say, folks, this is why we're losing people. Because they're looking at reality, and then they look at the Bible, oh, a guy rode around a whale's belly for 3 days. I think it has a lot to do with that. And if you look at the fact that, well, like I said, the Pew Research poll, half of the Republicans, I did not get the figure, but it was significant of the Protestants. And it's very interesting that they're all very active in their religion. And I've also sat in the room with the preacher in multiple congregations. I've been in Pentecostal, I've been in Baptist, I've been in Methodist. I like to go to a lot of different churches and hear a lot of different things. And you hear it everywhere. And also, we're from Pennsylvania where we don't watch TV, we don't read, we talk to everybody around us because there's only like 5 people in your neighborhood. So you know what they think and what they feel, and you know where it comes from. And if they're telling you, and I keep hearing it, the Bible says blah, 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 we've only been here 6,000 years. See what I'm saying? So it is a huge problem because, you know, logic is conflicting here with mythology.
Because I find, like, I guess in the Canadian landscape, it's more a will to just ignore it rather than anything to do.
I wish we were that way. We're not. Our country, it's actually a political tool in our country. And that's probably one of the things I did not emphasize enough. It really is a huge problem in our country because we are the second largest contributor of greenhouse gases. And we need to clean our act up. But we can't because we've got political parties using religion as a tool, and they're being heavily funded by the groups that don't want change. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I don't think you find much opposition from us as to be secular here. I wonder about what your responses you get in America from your own communities by preaching.
It is as varied as what I just described to her. It depends upon who I'm talking to. In America, it's a country of doors. And there's a perception from the rest of the world, they look at us and they go, oh, they're all that way. And of course, we all do that. All the Brits are the same. I found out here, the Brits are not all the same. But it depends upon who you're talking to. And what's more frightening is these things have become so polarized and set in that you have to be really skilled when you're talking to someone. For instance, if I'm talking to someone from a Baptist church that's really heavily fundamental, I have to be very skilled to keep him engaged in the conversation. And I can do that But he still walks away going, he's crazy. He might like me, but oh, he's crazy. And what happens to a lot of people, though, that don't have those communication skills is the moment you start talking to the other person, if you're online, they leave, they block you, they go away. If you're out on the streets, the same thing. All of a sudden they have a menstrual cycle that's starting. I gotta leave. You know, in America, it's very, very difficult because there is no communication from either side. We're divided.
Roger.
Thank you very much. It's an international audience. So speaking as a Brit, lest you confront us with a man of straw, what do you mean by a literal view of
Well, all right. I think I addressed it in here, but in my country,
You gave examples.
I gave examples. In my country, a good example of that is someone that believes that the earth is just 6,000 years old. And the dinosaurs came and left in that 6,000 year period. Everything came and left in that 6,000 period. And as I mentioned, if you look at the speed of light, the fact that you can stand outside tonight and see Andromeda tells you, all right, that's 2.5 million years that light started out. So someone that carries that type of interpretation and believes every word. Again, I asked in the very beginning, all the men in here, about Leviticus 15:19. Everybody, the 7 guys that raised their hands that had wives, they don't put them out in the backyard anymore in a tent. We have evolved. And anybody that puts somebody outside in a tent, if there still exists, they would have definitely been who I'm talking about. Nowadays, we've dropped that because that's inconvenient. There was no memo from God saying, don't isolate your wife anymore. We had tampons. There was nothing to say anything about that. But we stopped doing it. We have cherry-picked our way to this point.
Can I try that?
Please.
With due respect, and coming from an institute that recognises religion and science in the other place.
Oh, that's what I love.
Okay, but one has to respect the fact, and I have friends who have a literal view of Genesis, but who wouldn't think of having a literal.
What did Christ say about truth?
Okay.
Okay.
When it came to the incidents of the Levitical law, which you
Yes.
put in naughtily,
Yes, I did. Yes, I darn sure did.
they would not think of representing that.
Oh, but they'll go back and reference that for homosexuality, won't they?
Not necessarily.
I see them do it all the time in my country. It's waved in our face constantly.
The reason being that there's a hermeneutical approach to operating the Levitical law, which is quite different from that.
I understand that, and I'm not really over here pointing a finger at Europe. I'm not really over here pointing a finger at the Catholic Church because France is trying. I'm here pointing a finger at us. I showed up to point the finger at us. And we need your help.
Okay, Brent, you have one comment and then I think we'll finish.
Good. Man wants tea.
So, I think you said at one point that preaching the gospel is psychologically beneficial. Or did I miss it?
No, what I said is that the teachings of Christ, if they're adhered to properly or as much as you can, no one can be Christ. But if you try and follow the teachings of Christ, it is by and large psychologically beneficial. And I brought forth a study that showed the linkage between the two.
So my question is, I don't know that you want to make a blanket statement that we should take none of the Bible literally, because, I mean, like what parts would you take from Christ's teaching as beneficial, and do you take a literal?
Well, see, that's the problem, and that's why we need very well-educated men who know and understand what a parable is.
Men and women.
And that's our
It is not, there's a problem is you've got people picking these texts up and looking at them, and they have no frame of reference. They're reading it, and they're making up in their own minds what it means and what it says. And the fact of the matter is I'm not really here to talk about that as much, but my key point here is we're not acknowledging reality.